Hi there, I'm Alex from Datalex, and this is a quick tour of the Datalex Data Wrangler. So one of the most common used formats for data sharing is the text file. This could be an Excel file, but it could be also a CSV or a TSV. All of them essentially are the same concept, which is a table in a file. Okay. So because this is so common, it's valuable to have a tool that can help us with manipulating a file like this, like making it fit what we need for our purpose. So Data Wrangler is an app that assists in exactly that. It does a collection of things. For example, you could start by this file I have here on the background, and you could look into what the file contains. It's something I just downloaded now, and it's new also to me. Has index, customer ID, first name, last name, company, etc. Okay. So this is a way of quickly inspecting what's inside of it. And then it can do things like, for example, replace something in the header. So let's go try to do that transformation. We could remove spaces. We could remove all of these different symbols maybe we typically don't want in a header. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace what we have here as the customer ID, and I want just to have it as a customer. So let's try that. So select it here and run. When it finishes, it creates a CSV next to the original one that should have the transformations that we just performed. So when it finishes opening, and you see here that the customer column now is just customer, it's not customer ID anymore. Okay, what else can it do? So the other transformations are lowercase the header. Sometimes we want to put all of the letters in the header as a lowercase. We can choose to drop columns. We can choose to replace in rows. So we could remove some things in existing rows and put something else in there. We can format dates. Dates are a big topic always in these type of files because it's just the text that comes with it without any other meta information about it, which means that we often will have to do some transformations on the dates. This is very, very common, and this was a one part that I spent quite some time trying to make work. So typically what you define is you choose the column you want to do the transformation on. You say the format that that column is on, and see, this is one typical issue you might run into, which is the way of representing dates in US versus Europe is different, right? So you might want to change between one format and the other, right? So this is an example of where I say, hey, my date in my current file is in this way, but I actually want it in that way. And we can define that for any column. By the way, this character here is just a way of commenting. It's a little bit like the Python commenting. So if we run this now, it would only apply to the invoice date, this type of transformation. All the other ones would be commented out, so they don't apply. So this is just a way of avoiding to have to delete something we've done before if we want to keep a reference, but we can kind of turn it on or off. Okay, the other thing is include rows with. So if we look, for example, here, we could choose include only the rows that have the country Andorra, for example. Okay, that's what it does. Or we can also choose to exclude them. So these types of transformations are very common. Often you need to take a slice of this data out for some kind of purpose of summarization, or to do some kind of other operation. So these are transformations that we could do. The other one is also sampling. So here in this app, we can do sample a fraction. We could say that get all the files or all the data inside the file and then take a fraction out of it, and this is half of it. Okay, we could do 10%, we could do 90%, for example. We can sample it in that way. The other thing we can do a little bit more trickier to use, but also powerful, very powerful, which is evaluation and expression. So we could do things like creating a new column based on columns that already exist in that text file. Okay, and sometimes those operations are easy to do in like Excel file, but this tool is made for the cases where the data is so large, like think of multiple gigabytes of data, where actually doing that in an Excel file is not possible. Once you get to that size of files of data, it's actually quite hard to work with, and that's why I ended up doing this tool. The way this tool works is it does not try to load all of the data in one go to operate on, but it actually gets chunks of the data. So imagine it gets the first 100 rows, does some transformation, and then kind of saves it into a file, and then goes fetch the next 101 and does the same thing. So it actually scales to very large files. In fact, recently I had a project where I handled 40 gigs of data, which is something which I could not do by far in Excel. Okay. So the other part, that was part one, which is all the transformations. The other part is inserting. So once you have the data, and imagine you have a very large data set, and you do some transformations, you clean it up, you fix the dates, for example. How can you then go and query it, right? How can you do some calculations on top of it? Because again, Excel, you're not going to be able to do it. And Excel is an excellent tool, right? But if you are a data science that has to handle a certain amount of data, there is a limitation there. So the other thing that this tool can do is actually insert into a SQLite file. So this SQLite is like a little local database that it's also goes into a file, but it's organized in a way, or it's formatted as a regular database. So once you have data in that format, so once you move from an Excel into a database like this, then it's actually a very smart system that it's a system that allows you to query very large data. Again, I recently used with 40 gigabytes of data. So just to give you a dimension, and it gets slow, of course, at that size, but it was not at the limit. I know I could do more. So let's try insert this into the SQLite database. So I actually know, in this case, that we're going to get an error. Let's try. Okay, and we see what we have here. We say duplicate column name index. So some files, because we are inserting into a database, sometimes there are certain limitations, and in this case we cannot have a column which is name indexed. So what we can do, we can use the other manipulations we have. So let's go and drop a column in the named index. We could rename it, but in this case we don't really need it, because the database is going to actually index it also for us once we get to that. So what I can do is just list here the columns I want to be dropped. So I'm going to go and drop the index. And maybe I'll try to do all in a row. So I will do, replace in header, from this original file, replace header, drop the column index, and then insert into the SQLite database. Okay. We have here an indication that it's finished. I see that it also produced another file, which should be a new file, a new CSV that does all these transformations. And if all went well, we should have also in our database, we should have this table inserted. So I will try to open it and see what we have here. Yeah. So this is an app. This is separate from the data Wrangler. Data Wrangler is just an app you can get to query those SQLite databases. But as you can see, we inserted 12 columns. And customer first name, last name. The index was added automatically, something separate that it does by itself. And so yeah, we can now go and start query the data. And if you had a very large data set that Excel could not handle, you can then do it inside this environment, which is, for example, this is one app that is able to query the SQL database. There will be others, but this is a good one, the SQLite Studio. Okay. The other things it can do, sometimes you want to import a whole folder of CSV files or TSV files into the database. So you could do that. For each file, it will create a different table in the database. But once they are in the database, you can actually then join them all into one table. If you want, you can do whatever transformation you want once it's inside that database. So that's one thing it does. The other thing is we can also run what I call here a profile. So it will create a collection of SQL commands and do summaries of what it inserted into the database. So it will say that there are, I don't know, let's say 20 unique first names 30 unique last names, 10 countries, or etc. So it will do some summaries, and it will give you some examples of what SQL would you need to query some of those columns. Okay, I hope this is useful, and thank you. Bye-bye.